Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSE Squared podcast. Welcome, everybody, to the PBSE podcast, episode 284. This is Mark and Steve coming at you with an interesting topic, one that we hear more and more about, and one that we felt would be important to address. And as you can see in the title here, this is what even just maybe 5-10 years ago would have been a fairly obscure issue or dilemma that is presented. I know Mark and I talked about this off air. We are seeing this more and more and more in our practices. So we are grateful for this partner writing in. Our hearts go out to her and to him, and we hope that this coupleship can take something of value from this. And I'm going to, just for sake of clarity, this is on the little bit on the longer side. I'm going to read it, but I'm going to do it quickly so that everybody here, we're not paraphrasing this one. Everybody knows exactly what's being said. And again, this is from a partner. I found your podcast 2 years ago when I first discovered my husband's sex addiction, just a few days before our first baby was delivered. Let's see. It was a lifeline then and now, 2 years into this nightmare, and I'm hoping you can help. We really appreciate that feedback, and we hope this will be helpful for you. After discovery, day one, my husband began recovery with many slips, half-truths, and stop-and-start efforts. I was angry, devastated, shocked, revolted, and I let him know it every day. I believed wrongly that he didn't have enough shame. So she was thinking that more shame, right, would get him to change. And I love that transparency. I wish I could go back and play my part differently. Things started to improve, and my husband began the 12 steps with an incredible sponsor. I saw the progress he was making and began my own 12-step journey on maternity leave while on maternity leave with our second baby. I developed a new understanding of myself, my husband, and addiction, and I can honestly say I love my husband more now than the day we married. I have been far from perfect and still can be judgmental and critical, but my effort and love is sincere and consistent. Love that. The past several months have been increasingly difficult. My husband became even more remote, cold, aloof. He would disappear for hours, play video games all night, be impatient with our children, absent with work, and was generally a miserable person to deal with. After months of asking if he was acting out, I broke my own quote-unquote sobriety and spied on him by listening to a therapy session and reading his journal. Which we will just say, I'm just going to, for sake of clarity, that is absolutely not okay. All right. It turns out he has been acting out, but not with porn or prostitutes as he used to, but with other couples, including men who are part of a polyamorous community. Polyamorous, for those who don't know, it means many things, but generally speaking, when you're referring to polyamorous, it means quote unquote loving or being with lots of different individuals, oftentimes crossing gender boundaries as well as traditional sexual boundaries as well. Okay. Although it can mean a lot of things. When confronted, he lied. He lied until I showed irrefutable proof that I knew. Now he says he is not a sex addict, but polyamorous, and I must accept that part of him to stay in the marriage. I think he is in denial, and this is an escalation of his addiction. I have moved out to my parents for the past few weeks and told them I want to be with him, but only if he is in recovery. This enrages him. He wants me to come home and says that I am not listening to him when he says this is who he is. I think he is afraid his recovery will fail and would prefer to practice his addiction pretending he is simply quote-unquote polyamorous because recovery is so hard. Am I right to believe he is in denial? If so, what can I say or do to help him see reason? Our children are both less than 3 years old. Please help me. What a hard situation.
Wow. There is a lot going on here. We, of course, don't know this couple. We don't know her or him. We will tell you that there's a lot here that we have experienced over, the last 20 plus years in our own personal practices. So we're not going to try to assume what's happening here, but we are going to try to offer as raw and real of insights as we possibly can. right? What should be considered? What's really happening here? The first thing we want to say is we are not, and we say this often in the PBSE podcast, we are not the moral police, right? It's not our job to say, what is morally right or wrong. That this is something that needs to be determined by each individual. And the coupleship, obviously. What we will say is that this is very much an issue of three things. One is authenticity. And we're going to talk about each one of these. One is what is truly authentic at my deep inside core of my soul. What is authentic, right? My identity, who I am. What is that? Second is the concept of acceptance. What does it mean to accept others? And then the third very important component in all of this, what does it mean to be compatible?
Yes.
So authenticity, acceptance, and compatibility.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about those.
And they all play a huge role in this, right? And kind of to what Mark said, we are not the moral police here. We are very aware of the political and sexual gender spectrum climate that we operate within now. We understand that there's a lot of ongoing research and science in a variety of areas in this realm, and we're not here to dictate to anybody sexual identity or delve into that today. That is not what this podcast is about. But we do need to look at, like Mark said, this from the lens of this relationship and its sustainability given the current factors involved, because that's what's
Yeah,
being asked,
yeah.
right?
And
So,
the first thing that
yeah, go
hit
ahead.
me, regardless of what your feelings are about any of this, we need to all come to the common place that says this addict partner has radically altered the original marriage understanding and agreement and commitment to exclusivity.
Yes.
Right? He didn't express any of this. None of this was on the table when they first came together. There was an agreement between the two of them. We're agreeing to marry each other under these circumstances, commitment, agreement, contract, call it whatever you will. And he now wants to radically alter that. It's a
Yes.
very important component of this.
Now we are sensitive to the fact that we increase in insight and we also evolve as people during the course of a relationship.
You do.
That being said, that does not change what Mark just stated, right? As we change, as we evolve, as we grow, just like, I mean, really look at a part for purposes of the discussion, because I think it makes it a lot easier to understand. Look at a marriage, and we've used this example before on the podcast. Look at a marriage like a company merger, right? You have company A that makes certain products, you have company B that makes certain products. When those two companies merge, why do they do that? Hey, it's of mutual benefit for us to put something together here, right? We're going to merge these things, and we're going to, because why? Among other things, we have sufficiently compatible life goals,
Yeah.
right? Our mission statements are in sufficient alignment that both of us can be stronger together and enjoy our lives more than if we were alone, right? That's the goal. Well, in a company merger, if one company and the other company have merged, and company A, whatever autonomy it still remains, begins to say one day, hey, we are changing our product line, right? We're making something else now. That behooves the necessity for company B to be able to look at that. And if they're going to remain authentic to their mission, they now need to examine in turn and be able to say, how does that work with me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
We're now changing our mission statement. We're changing our vision and our goals. The place that we came from when we initially made this merger is radically altering.
In a technical sense, one partner in this marriage right now is in breach of contract. That's
True.
what's going on here.
It's true.
Right? Now,
Yeah.
again, that doesn't, again, that we can say that and still factor in that, again, people evolve and change, and there's lots of reasons why things come up later, but it does not change that fact. Reasons do not change outcomes, right? Context does not change outcomes.
It
We
does.
still are dealing with a situation where compatibility existed to one degree, and based on shifts that are being vocalized by one, it has completely changed the equation of what made this coupleship work before.
Right.
And so that's what we're dealing with, right? And so
Yeah.
let's talk about
Yeah.
these. Let's go ahead, Mark.
Well,
Before we
so I want to say something. I mean, she asks us, she's trying to, in a very confused place, Well, I think wisely because she's obviously done a lot of recovery work. She talks about it. She's become more wiser about what addiction means, how it works. She is seeing a lot of signs, a lot of, a lot of signals in the way her partner is behaving that could easily lead a partner to say, is this just him acting in his addiction? Right? Because she talks about the fact that he was doing really well. He had a sponsor in 12 step, things were going great. Then all of a sudden he started to get moody. He started to shut himself off. He used to disappear. He started disappearing for hours, playing video games all night, becoming impatient with her and the children, not showing up for work. I mean, all the things that she alludes to in describing the behaviors tells me an addict who has relapsed back into full on addiction. Now, that's just my opinion. That's just me gauging things on my own past and in 20 plus years in this arena. But here's a real huge caution to this guy and any other addict listening. Please be very, very, very cautious when you are still in addiction, when you don't have long periods of sobriety, 6 or 12 months of sobriety or better, when you're not in a good, solid, healthy emotional space. If you're not on that really good, healthy path, please be very cautious about making decisions about your identity or your future or your path forward that are going to impact you and the people that you love for the rest of your lives. I made decisions in full on addiction that I regret to this day. They had massive impacts on my life. Even now, I'm still
Oh, yeah.
feeling repercussions of making decisions when I was in addict mode.
Yep.
I thought were fully authentic, fully genuine. I know exactly who I am. I know exactly what I'm doing. And I didn't. I was not in a long-term healthy space to be determining what was healthy and what was not.
Yeah. Nope.
I
I'm in complete agreement
bigger
with that
caution for
statement.
people listening. Yeah. Huge.
Well, well, and it's and I mean it goes along the lines of the same reason why we don't issue or strongly exercise caution when we issue formal diagnoses to guys while they're in active addiction, right? Because there are many stages of addiction, withdrawal, early recovery that for reasons we don't have time to get into here mimic, for example, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. For many, while they're learning to emotionally regulate, bipolar disorder,
Yes.
right? If you do not take into account the outside factors and you just focus strictly on behaviors, one might diagnose somebody in many cases, like with a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, which once that is in a medical chart never leaves, that may be incorrect. Now, it could be correct, but it might not be. And it would be foolhardy for anyone to simply, after the period, and it sounds like this has been a fairly quick evolution in the period of a few matter of months to make these kinds of changes and just say, well, now this is now me. This is authentic. Maybe, maybe not,
Yeah, maybe
right?
not. Has there been a full-on diagnosis by experts in the field, or is he just doing self-diagnosis?
And are you and is it quote unquote authentic enough for you? And we're using that in air quotes, given the caution we just gave. Is it authentic enough to override the other areas of your life that are authentic, which is being a husband and a father in the current family that you are in,
Yeah, it's it's it's
right?
it's so true, right?
Because authenticity is multifaceted, right? There is a part of me, and I know this is a chintzy example, but it demonstrates truth. There is a part of me that authentically loves McDonald's double quarter pounders with cheese. It's completely authentic. I love those things. Never frozen, never flash frozen, always fresh meat. I'm all about that. There's another part of me that is authentic that also recognizes that I'm a diabetic and a two-time cancer survivor and that my veins things stick to them more easily because of those two things. And so, even though authentically a piece of me loves quarter pounders and adheres to that, there's another part of me that also says that engaging too much with that might be incompatible with like living.
Hmm.
Now, again, I don't mean to infer, okay, that again, this guy is just putting on an act because maybe he's not. Maybe it is genuine. The point that I'm simply trying to make is each individual has to weigh the different authentic elements of their life, and that when the rubber hits the road, when we determine compatibility, and especially in a coupleship dynamic, sometimes that involves asking hard questions. which part of me is more authentic in this arena. It
That's
isn't
right.
always just a question of this is what I feel and that lines up with everything else. It doesn't,
No,
right?
we're identifying priorities in our lives all the time.
Correct.
It is a constant give and take equation as to what matters most.
I mean, everybody does this with a job, right? Every man that provides for his family financially, for example, can adhere to this. Authentically, there's an authentic piece of me, Mark knows this, that would just love to go fishing at the local reservoir for rainbow trout 8 hours a day. But there's also an authentic part of me that needs to put food on the table,
Yeah.
right? There's a part of me that needs to, be around. And it's not just with my job, right? There's a part of me that authentically needs to be present for other areas of my life as a new father, as a husband.
Yeah.
Me being on the lake for 8 hours a day isn't conducive to those things. So I have to what? I have to figure out what is the authentic balance, right?
I had a very real part of this in for several decades, I will tell you. I'm just a natural introvert. I'm better off alone by myself. I'm better off closing myself off and not interacting with others. Right? There was a time when I thought that that was all of that was absolutely authentic. And perhaps maybe it was in some ways. But I had some decisions to make about what really mattered in my life. And part of that was there were people around me that I really loved and really wanted to be close to. And I had to go against some very natural parts of me in order to have some higher things that I desired more. Right? Very big part of that process. Now, whatever that is for this guy, we're not here to say what is authentic for him and what isn't. He has the sovereign right, and as you said before we did this broadcast, Steve, even the obligation to make every effort to live his absolutely deep center core soul authentic place.
Yes.
But it's his sovereign right and obligation to absolutely determine what that is and then pursue it. His partner also has the sovereign right and obligation to do the same for herself.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but there's a lot we could say about that. I've got so many other thoughts I want to share, but for sake of time, these podcasts, we usually can't go more than half an hour. And if there was only a place like Dare to Connect where you could go to get immediate answers to questions like this and interact back and forth with us, because I'm sure many listening to this podcast are like, well, I've got a question about this, question about that, question about this. Jump into Dare to Connect. We'd love to dialogue with you about it in
There's a
an open
lot of
forum.
dialogue
That would
to
be
be had
great.
here.
DareToConnectNow.com, free 2 week trial, guys. Come grab
Yeah.
it.
And Steve,
But
you and I, we could spend 5 podcasts on what it means to be authentic.
and we have. If
And we
you go
have.
back through our podcast episodes, there are many.
There are many.
Where
So
we
we're gonna.
some recently, even in the last couple of months.
So let's
So
say that you've determined what is truly, truly authentic for you. And boy, navigating that as an addict is no small task.
especially in early recovery or no
Oh,
recovery. Yeah.
oh, wow. Yeah. But let's say you have.
Okay.
Now we get to the place. Let's talk about our two other words that we said we would hear, acceptance and compatibility. So what's
Yes.
acceptance?
So now this is where we're going to face off a little bit, and we recognize that this may run aground with certain people in terms of how they define this in the sexual spectrum, geopolitical arenas that many of us find ourselves in this rapidly evolving culture of ours. There is oftentimes a intertwining of the term acceptance with the term agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes people will say, I am looking for acceptance, when in fact what I'm looking for is for others to agree with me. And they're not the same. They're not.
I'm looking for others to give up their authenticity in order to fully embrace mine, period.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And so acceptance and agreement are simply not the same thing. I know that may be unpopular with some people. Too damn bad. It is what it is. That is simply what it is. These and that is true. Acceptance of someone or something, guys. Here's a couple of things to attach to that. Means internalizing them as they genuinely are. Okay, now notice the terminology there. Internalizing. If I am accepting or emotionally embracing another person, I am accepting them as they am. I'm recognizing that they exhibit certain characteristics, hopes, dreams, wants, needs, etc. Right? And I am seeing them and continue and walking a path to some degree with them as they are. So, in other words, acceptance is truly internalizing and seeing a person as they are. Right?
Yeah,
and
and
recognizing that.
recognizing that and very much coming to the place of I fully embrace your right to do you.
Exactly. You need to do you. You've heard those who've listened to this podcast for a long time have heard the our one line slogan between healthy boundaries. You do you, I do me.
I do me. And does that mean that we cannot have acceptance of each other's side of the street? No, we can. But does that mean that I have to be in full agreement with you and even abandon my authenticity in order to accept yours? Not
No.
true.
I
Not
mean,
true.
it's important to acknowledge, guys, a key component to emotional intelligence, okay, is separating acceptance of someone or something and agreeing with and or adopting and or be quote unquote becoming okay with said lifestyle, paradigm, approach, value set, whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? Again, you do you. I need to do me. Again, not just I get to do me. I have to do me. My job is to project my authentic influence into the world, just like your job is to do that.
Hey, everybody. PBSE podcast hosts Mark and Steve here with a special message about our revolutionary online recovery program for addict spouses and couples called Dare to Connect. Multiple times every week, we get messages from subscribers in the program. They're people just like you. They're trying to heal from the devastation of sex and porn addiction and betrayal trauma. And here's a few of our most recent submissions. Here's one from an addict in recovery. It says, D2C has principles that everyone should utilize regardless of their circumstances. It doesn't matter your coping mechanisms. It matters that you want to work towards genuine connection with your partner.
That's awesome. Another testimony from an addict continues on. My wife is just starting out in training as a licensed therapist. Dare to Connect has been far more useful to her than her degree.
Wow.
The way Mark and Steve apply what they've learned is always so redemptive. D2C has opened doors for my relationship that I thought would be shut forever. Mark and Steve are an incredible resource of information on the subject of sex addiction and betrayal trauma. We could not do this journey without their help.
Here's one from a partner who's been with us for nearly a year. I want you both to know that it is because of you guys and D2C that I'm able to be in the place that I am today. I will always be grateful to you both for your feedback and prompt replies to my questions. I can't even come close to putting it into words how valuable my time spent with y'all this past year has been to my life. Thank you for everything you taught me about betrayal trauma and boundaries and thinking errors and loving myself and making myself a priority and standing up for myself.
Love that. Love that submission. And then as we close out here today, guys, one more account from another addict in recovery. I wish I had a platform like this 14 years ago where I could have learned and done the hard work of recovery before I had done all this damage to myself and to my spouse. And to be candid with all of you, that's exactly why we created Dare to Connect. Mark and I found ourselves in that place. Messages like these and the others like them, they're what Dare to Connect really is all about, guys, and why Mark and I do what we do. Whether you're an addict or a partner of an addict, and no matter where you find yourself in the recovery process, Dare to Connect can take you to the next level. Don't wait another day to catapult your recovery forward. Today is your day for change. Visit us at daretoconnectnow.com to pick up your free 2-week trial of Dare to Connect today.
Well, and somehow what I've noticed in the culture is a couple of very long-standing principles have been increasingly abandoned. How about the old term, we'll just agree to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
I can love you, I can respect you, I can honor you while not agreeing with you. We can be cordial, right? So the agree to not disagree, or agree to disagree. The other one is, just this whole concept of I may not agree with you, but I will defend your right to have your opinion to the death.
Yeah.
And I hope that you'll defend my right to have my opinion to the death. Where did that go in this culture that's growing? It's growing all around us, right? That we can coexist.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and so in other words, guys, where does this meet the road for today's discussion so we don't turn into a political podcast here? In other words, acceptance doesn't always correlate with compatibility, which takes us to our last topic.
Yes. And I
right?
think that's where we have a lot of resistance to this, right? I want you to accept me, which means we have to be fully compatible or you don't accept me.
Yes,
And we have trouble
absolutely,
with that.
for sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk compatibility. What is compatibility,
Mm.
right? Oh, in the context of a relationship, what compatibility means is how far, how authentically, and how deeply can I, and here's the key word, can I commit to a person, lifestyle, idea, or paradigm?
Yes.
In other words, it's more than simply, again, accepting them and recognizing this has a validity to exist. It does exist. This is a thing. This is real. It's real for them. It's real for this group. It's real for whatever. And it extends into how much or if at all am I going to commit to it? Am I
Yeah.
committing my allegiance to it? Do I restructure my life in alignment with it?
Yes.
Right?
And what do we see too often when it comes to this place? I did this all the time. I didn't agree with people's positions, but because I wanted to go along to get along, because I didn't want to make waves, I hated confrontation, just hated it more than death. I self betrayed on a regular basis and gave myself over to things that I did not believe in, that I could not sustain, that I wasn't ready to commit my whole life and my whole self to. And that created enormous unhappiness for me and for the people that I engaged with on that basis.
Yeah.
We were not compatible, right? And we have this term sitting here, love was not enough. Well, I love you. Well, that means that you'll agree with me, fully embrace me, and fully give yourself over to my choices, lifestyle, or whatever. That means love. It's really been twisted, hasn't it?
Hey, there's a lot of shifts. There's a lot of changes.
Yeah.
So, in other words, guys, in the context of a relationship, and we did a podcast about this. It was either last week or 2 weeks ago. Love is not enough. When you look at any intimate relationship, there are two sides really to any relationship. There's the affectional or relational side, which is how much do I like or dislike, how much do I love or hate a person, right? Or a thing. But then the other part is this compatibility piece. How much are we in alignment? Both of those sides determine the level of intimacy in a relationship, among other factors. I might love, you can absolutely fall in love with the wrong person. You can stay in love with the wrong person. We're not saying that that's happening here, but that is an absolute possibility. I can absolutely be out of sync with how much I care, with recognizing that that may not work as far as collaboration goes in the
Yeah.
relationship,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there are different types of intimate relationships, but a marriage, by definition, or a committed relationship is a collaborative one. Whether it's in the case of this couple and there's children involved, or it's just the household, or whatever the case is, right? Because all those things influence that. Relationships require a critical mass of compatibility in order to last, grow, and deepen. There's just no way around that.
No way around it. Yeah.
Again, love is not enough.
Yeah.
There has to be enough shared here in terms of going back to our couple analogy. At some point, if company A at some point, if company A continues to change and company B continues to change, at some point that merger is going to need to be dissolved out of necessity if the companies are both going to continue to remain affluent.
Yeah.
They won't be able to exist anymore because they're almost reaching a point now where they're working against one another,
Yeah, exactly. And
right?
she asked us a question when your submission, am I right to believe he's in denial? In other words, is this addiction or is this truly authentic? We don't know. Maybe he's in denial. We already said in our 20 plus years of experience, there's a good possibility of that. But what's the more relevant question? How compatible am I as the betrayed partner here in with his paradigm or approach or the style of living he's choosing? Is that compatible with my vision, goals, happiness, path going forward? If polyamory is in fact authentic at his core soul, what does that mean for me in terms of remaining in this relationship?
And what does it mean for him?
What does it mean for him?
Right? That remember that nuanced authenticity we talked about a minute ago, folks? That's what we're talking about here. Right? This couple has some very difficult discussions ahead of them,
Oh
is the
man.
reality.
Yeah.
Because each of them are going to have to kind of emotionally and mentally triage, for lack of a better term, which pieces of our authenticity match up where, and then what does that mean?
Yeah,
Because unfortunately, this is a situation where if he is in fact operating under this authentic premise, there are no easy answers, and there is going to be some loss here on some level.
without
Even
question.
if the relationship stays, even if, for example, the relationship stays together, if he truly is in that place, the intimacy on this in this relationship, because of the very understandable wants and authentic needs of this partner for exclusivity and other things, which polyamory in every sense of the word is incompatible with, and which we do not agree with on this program at all.
Completely incompatible.
If those aren't compatible, guess what's going to happen to the inherent intimacy, physical and otherwise, in this relationship? It will be stunted. There
Yeah,
is no way around that
be down.
if she chooses to stay. But it may be right for her to choose that, right? Because again, there's all these factors involved.
Yeah,
And that's where each person needs to figure out, which of these elements, matter most. And that's an unfortunate position to be in, but it is nevertheless the position. Now, as far as her actual question goes, am I right to believe he is in denial? Maybe.
we talked about that.
Yeah, he might be, right? But we already addressed the compatibility. She had one other question. What can I do or say to help him to see reason?
Mm, what
Right?
to help him to see reason.
She is not going to like this answer, but we're going to just be as real with her as we can. Part of being in a relationship, anytime, and we talked about this in D2C really in depth last month. Anytime, if you are truly honoring and operating authentically within a relationship, an intimate relationship, the first thing that always happens if we're being authentic is an acknowledgement of the sacredness of the other person's uh, free agency,
Agency,
right to choose,
ability to choose, yeah,
right?
their
We
sovereignty.
You
Mhm.
can only operate in a relation. Loving another person means first and foremost accepting that scary fact.
Yep. And so what can, and we talk with betrayed partners about this all the time. They say, well, then what can I do? The thing you can do is to do the personal work on your side to truly know what is authentic to you. What do you truly want and need at your core?
Yes.
And then have you created boundaries around those wants and needs to protect them? And then you share that with him. This is what you've shared with me, what you're saying is authentic to you. Let me share with you what is authentic at my core to me.
And that does include, by the way, and it involves him sharing as well. And sounds like he's done that, although it sounds like in a less than vulnerable way.
Mm.
Here's the impact that the choices, the path that you're choosing, the actions that you're taking are having on me
Yes.
and on this relationship from my perspective. And you need to know that. I'm not here to judge you about it, but I am here to inform you so that you can be making informed decisions,
Yeah.
because you can't make those unless you know how this is influencing me,
And
right?
what does this mean? You're choosing that path. I'm telling you what's critical to me on and based on our original agreement and contract as a coupleship. What does this mean now for us to walk these two different paths?
Yeah.
What does that
Well,
look like to go?
and that's the scary part. And again, this is why I said this may not be the popular answer, but from where we are sitting, it is the correct one. In other words, you can express your concerns, and you need to, and you need to share in whatever way you safely can. This is what I'm about. This is why I'm at the position. This is where I'm at. This is how far down this path in X, Y, and Z ways I can walk with you. And this is how far I can't.
Mm.
Right. But as far as making him quote unquote see reason, you can't.
You can't
You
making him
can.
choose you. You can't.
You
Right.
can't. That is up to him.
Right.
Relationships are always, they always have been, and they will always continue to remain. If they're to remain authentic, they're based on choice.
Yeah.
Every day, when each of us gets up in an intimate relationship, we put on our pants the same way, one leg at a time. We look in the mirror and we say, what am I going to choose and what am I going to commit to today?
Mhm.
For some of us, that choice has become very easy and very subconscious. For some of us, when we're facing these parts of recovery, it's not so easy. But this is the reality of the situation. Relationships hinge on being chosen, and being chosen means adopting and accepting the risk that you might not be.
Yeah.
And
That
that
you.
sucks,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but it is the truth.
Well, and Steve, you and I have talked about this. One of the most important maturing, moving forward in our lives as addicts in recovery was when we came to the decision one day in our heart of hearts where we finally said to ourselves, there is no world in which I can have it all.
I can't have both of these worlds.
On it
Yeah.
all.
Yep.
You can't.
They're not compatible. Door number three does not exist. There are certain elements to addiction, and not just to addiction, but all the other things that she listed in her submission that we talked about before.
Yeah.
There are all these elements in my lifestyle and how I'm showing up, the fact I'm being not vulnerable, I'm being emotionally erratic, I'm escaping through video games all night long, right? These things are simply not compatible with this other side. And I am at a fork in the road and I need to choose.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
hard decisions, but we hope that this has been helpful. We appreciate you allowing us a forum to tackle what I think most people, frankly, running a podcast like this would say is walking yourself to a firing squad. And who knows, maybe we did. If we did, we don't care. It just is what it is. This is where we are.
Well,
So
and there's one final thing that occurs to me.
yeah, please.
She describes that he was doing, as she said, really well when he was in solid recovery and had a sponsor and was doing all this stuff. He was happy, he was open, he was an amazing guy, and then that all went away. If this is true, if this polyamorous lifestyle is truly his authentic core soul, why did that happen?
Yeah.
What, right? There's some contradiction going on there.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
just
For
a
sure.
thought as we close up.
For sure. Well, everyone, we love you. We appreciate you. Thank you for dialing in, tuning into the podcast. As always, if you like what you hear here, and like the approach and the unapologetic, although tactful way in which we approach things, you will love Dare to Connect. We invite you to come grab a 2-week free trial on that. You can find that at daretoconnectnow.com. Come see if it fits for you. If it doesn't, mazel tov. But if it does, you may be able to make 2025 year year. Make this the year where you're done with this nonsense.
Yeah.
Let's make progress. Let's what it coulda shouldas, man. How many of us, Mark and myself included, have built a mountain out of woulda coulda shouldas? Let's just do it. Come over and join us now, daretoconnectnow.com. You can find that. And also at that same website, if you would like to submit in questions to be addressed on the podcast, we are lagging behind anywhere between 2 and 6 weeks, depending on how many submissions we've gotten. But if you're willing to wait on those submissions and send those in, you can send those in if you click at the PBSE podcast banner at the top of daretoconnectnow.com. Down at the bottom, there is a contact form. You can send those to us in.
Yep. Yep. All right. Hey, thanks for being with us again. Love and appreciate all of you. And we will definitely look forward to the next episode.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Everything expressed on the PBSE podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.